Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast, and with us today we have James Clark. Hello.
Good morning, Sam. How are you?
Very good, very good. We've been having insane connection issues over the last, God knows, 15 minutes, but hopefully it will be okay. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, no problem. I'm the senior manager for PR for Toyota and Lexus in the UK. So I look after our whole PR department in terms of the way we deal with the media, our launch events, test drives, press releases, the whole lot. So bluntly, I've got a really cool job.
How did you get into this? Have you been in the sort of car industry for a while, or sort of PR side?
Yeah, the latter actually. So I was a journalist in my first career, but not a car journalist. I was a news journalist for national newspapers, a defence correspondent in the main, so covering wars, not cars.
Wow.
And then went into PR and worked in PR in various big companies, not automotive, but I've always been a massive petrol head. And car fan, old car owner, rubbish racer, all that kind of thing. And Toyota came to me just over 5 years ago, out of the blue, and said they would like me to come and do the same thing for them. And it's not a question you say no to, so really lucky.
That's nice, awesome to be able to sort of combine the two in one point. Yeah. Did you think you were going to, at any point, you might want to work in the car industry?
Do you know, so it's really interesting. Lots of friends of mine who are cleverer than me, which is all of them, had said for years, you should go and do this. You would love it. It's vocational for you. You know, things that would seem like hard work in any other business, you'd be doing hard work about cars, which makes you happy. Yeah. And I didn't listen to any of them. And 5 years after actually doing it, I realized that they've been right for the last 15 years. So the moral here is listen to your cleverer friends.
Yeah. When they say you might be good at this, give it a go. I was gonna ask, because I'm sure there's loads of budding people that want to work in the sort of automotive sector out there, and sure. I was gonna say, like, how, sort of what was your avenue into it, but I guess you got headhunted into it from a separate industry. So do you have any sort of thoughts for people coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd say is that the boring as this is, but it's true, the skills that you need to be in PR are PR skills. So the fact I happen to work in the motor industry, the fact that I'm a car fan and I know and love cars is really helpful, but it's not the qualification for the job. There's a lot of people out there who know and love cars and aren't Le Mans racing drivers. Me, for example, total lack of talent. But I think if you can work hard at the core skills and make yourself known to people in the industry, which is the single biggest thing, really. So it's a bit like journalism. I mean, you often, when you talk to some of the top automotive journalists, they'll tell you the bit that matters most is the writing, it's the journalism, because you can learn to drive faster, you can learn to review cars, but you have to be able to write and you have to have a passion for that. And I think it's the same in PR. You've got to have those core skills. I guess my simplest advice would be look for events where companies are present. So test days, festivals, Festival of the Unexceptional, Carfest, those kind of things, Goodwood, and take the time to find out who the people are and just go and see them, collar them, stop for 5 minutes, ask them if they've got time for a coffee. It really, really works. And there's a number of people in our industry at various automotive companies whose foot in the door came from just doing that. You've got to do the hard work, of course, but there is no substitute for getting in people's faces and saying, this is me and this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I'm slowly learning this. I've heard this many and many times from everybody. It's like, go meet people and then it will work itself out down the line. But
yeah, I think that's right. And one of the big things of the automotive industry is trust, whether you're dealing with PRs or journalists. And I think really that only comes from FaceTime and time spent together. So it's worth doing. We're all busy, right? And it's hard sometimes to think you're going to give up a weekend and drive 300 miles to an event just to buttonhole some PRs, but it's or journalists, but it's definitely worth doing.
And okay, my PR, you're dealing with public relations, I guess, general
Yeah.
public. Do you deal with journalists and stuff like that again? No, so that would be press.
Yeah,
right?
so no, that's my bit. So I deal with the media. So that might be the automotive media. So you think of your Evos and your auto cars and so on. It might be lifestyle media, so people writing for GQ or Harper's. I deal with national newspapers as well. So sometimes that's on product stuff. So the guys who review cars, so the Telegraph or the Daily Mail. But sometimes I'll get a call from the Guardian news desk about emissions or environmental policy, and I deal with those things too. And of course, increasingly, we deal with guys like you, Sam. So your media, right? You have an audience, you have a product. So whether that be podcasts or YouTube channels, that's an increasingly big part of my workload, and a good part as well, because it's good fun.
Yeah, good. I've always slightly wondered, because you come across launches and whatever, and we're all as car people, we're sort of about them, the major magazines and maybe some big YouTubers and stuff like that. But in terms of, let's say, cars that get lent out or people that you're dealing with, what percentage is like automotive journalists? And let's say I'm going to put YouTubers in that group as well.
Sure.
Whether people want to put them together or not. And then versus like general media, like newspapers and other lifestyle-y type things. How does that split?
It's a really good question, Sam. I wish I could give you a really simple answer that said it splits, I don't know, 60-40.
Yeah.
Actually, it's about time. So what tends to happen is when we launch a car, one of the key things for us is over the time we're launching that car, and that's a period of months in our world, so people think a car launch is 2 weeks. It's not. It's about 6 months for us. We want to get everybody in that car that we can, of course. But there's a strange thing here. So if you imagine, take YouTubers or national newspapers or lifestyle for a moment, it's fabulous when they write about the product and say, this is good. Hopefully they say this is good.
Yeah.
Because they're getting to audiences that traditionally maybe we haven't got to. But what's also true, of course, is the media are not our customer. They're the prism through which our communications goes to the customers. So when the customers read in, I don't know, Tatler or the Daily Mail or whatever they're reading, or they watch a YouTube video, and they think, oh, that's really interesting, I might be interested in that. The first thing they do is write name of car, review into Google. And what they get there is Autocar and What Car and Evo and Top Gear and those guys. So the professional review is still core to us. And so it should be, because we can spend all day saying something's good. But of course, we have a dog in that fight. We need that third-party professional, we hope, advocacy if the product is good. Don't always get that. So long-winded way of saying, what we tend to do is get the automotive guys in the cars first, so that Google is populated with those, or the magazines, which still sell in big numbers, are populated with that. And then we very quickly roll that out through lifestyle, non-automotive media, and podcasts and internet channels of various sorts. So we get everybody in eventually. The other thing is it's really expensive. So lifting the curtain slightly on the automotive world, it probably, for an average car, so I don't know, Toyota CHR, for example, by average I mean not a kind of bespoke sports car or something, probably costs me about £2,000 a week to lend that to somebody. Ooh, in terms of the prep of the car, the parts, the delivery, all the things that have to go on. And I have to show, quite rightly, to the people who run the business, some return on investment for that. So we have a bar. And the way we do it at Toyota Lexus is not just on numbers, but we have a bar that basically says, has the person got a reasonable audience? And that might be judged on size, but we're also really careful not to only judge it on that. So, for example, I will always lend a Toyota Hilux to the Shooting Gazette, which sells, I don't know, not very many copies. But the key point is everybody who buys one needs a Toyota Hilux and can probably afford one. So we work on getting that audience just right. And we're also, I'm quite proud actually at Toyota, we're particularly good at identifying people who are coming up. So without naming names, there's a number of people now working in automotive media at a very senior level who we identified when they were bloggers and said, this person is doing really good stuff, or vloggers, in fact. You know, they're doing really good stuff. They've got a really good take on things. Doesn't matter they haven't got a huge audience. We will, if you like, invest in that.
Yeah.
We will phone them up and we'll offer them a car and see what they do with it. So there's no hard and fast rules, but it remains the case that the big automotive titles tend to get in things first. Once you boil away all the water, that's what you're left with.
It makes sense, and I endlessly get questions, and I think a lot of sort of people that are on the internet that get the occasional car get the question, you know, like how do you get a car from a manufacturer? Like how does that process work? I could say what I do, which is send an email or call someone. I'm less good at calling people, and I know calling people is actually probably better. Yeah. You need a bit of both. Yeah, so if someone's like cold reaching out to you, how do you... I know you've said you look at small people, you look at big people.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of thoughts or advice for someone reaching out for the first time, how they might, you know, want to approach it?
Sure. Definitely. We have... amongst guys and girls who do what I do for a living at the various companies, we obviously talk to each other a lot. We're quite close. We compare notes, and we have a little private phrase between us, which is ideally in red, and that comes from an email that I received about 4 years ago from somebody who just started a YouTube channel, had almost no followers, and asked me for an LFA to be delivered to their house, ideally in red. So we now use that phrase as a sort of catch-all for those sort of things. Why do I say that? I'm being flippant, but there's a sort of sense behind it. I think the really important thing is not just to send an email. I can't speak for other people. I probably get 300 emails a day, and I will get through them, but you know, time is time.
Yeah.
I think what's really good is to find a way to get in touch directly. A phone call is always really helpful. Have something prepared and think about what you're trying to say to the PR. So you want a car, right? That's why you're making the call. But actually, from the PR's point of view, everybody wants a car, right? Your neighbor wants a car.
Yeah.
The guy you met in the pub wants a car. What you need to be saying to the PR is, here is what I'm proposing to do if you lend me a car, and why I think it would be good for you. Now, that might be that you say, I have this audience that I don't think you talk to. And the reason I don't think you talk to them is I've looked at what you do. I've looked at your social, I've looked at your press releases. I don't think you're talking to this audience that I can put you in touch with. Or you might say, we do things differently. This is how we do our photography. Nobody else does this. And again, without mentioning names, there's somebody now working for one of the very big automotive websites who started off doing that, doing some really interesting, cool photography. And again, we sent them a Lexus RC back in the day. We were the first people to do so. And they just, you know, they did interesting things with it, something different.
Yeah.
I think most PRs will absolutely roll the dice and take a risk on somebody, but you have to have a good pitch ultimately. So simply saying, here's my audience, I'd like a car. Probably guys who do what I do for a living get 10 or 20 of those a day.
Yeah.
So you have to be different. You have to stand out, which sounds awful, doesn't it? It's like pitching a film or something. But I just think you have to get people's attention by showing them you can provide something that isn't provided elsewhere. It doesn't have to be huge, just has to be new.
Yeah. I've had it a few sort of variations on that. Sometimes it's okay, or not yet, or something like that. And I think I'm getting better at doing what you're saying. Basically trying to come back with something interesting and provide some value. I feel like I provide value. Hopefully that's why you're here.
Absolutely. Wouldn't be here if I didn't think you did.
Exactly. It is a really interesting one. And different teams seem to deal with it differently. I massively prefer the open and honest reply of you're not big enough, or we don't actually have many cars. I think there is a bit of an assumption that there's a lot of cars. There's a lot of press cars, and certain manufacturers have more than others and whatnot. But I think you saying you get 300 emails a day, or that sort of number of requests probably puts it in
Well,
a bit
not
better.
300 requests a day, 300 emails in total, but
Okay,
probably 4 or 5 requests a day from people I don't know. And it's not just me, but the other members of the team as well.
Yeah, and you only have a set number of cars and a set budget, I guess, and you've got to fit into all that. So that is,
and set time as well, Sam. So if you think when a car leaves us to go out to a member of the media, of whatever kind, it would have been through a 4-hour prep process and check process, which the guys at in our case, the Toyota Press Centre will do. Now, all of that is time and money, and while they're doing that, they're not doing another one.
Yeah.
So we have to prioritise. I guess my one other really core bit of advice is one of the ways to absolutely get a PR's attention if you're after a car for the first time is not to ask for the fast stuff. Honestly. Absolutely everybody. Hi, I'd like a GR Yaris, I'd like a Supra, I'd like an LFA, I'd like a Lexus LC, I'd like an RCF. Okay, yeah, I get that. I'm a petrol head, completely get it. But when you look at some of those cars, to some degree, they're the ones we probably need to take risks on least because they're very well-known vehicles. If you come to, say it was Toyota, and you said to me, hi, you don't know me, but I think I could do a really good job for you. I'd really like to borrow a Camry hybrid. Suddenly you've got my attention because you're not asking for a joyride.
Yeah.
You're asking for something professional. You've got a media outlet and you want to fill it. And that really is attention grabbing. And I bet you the same is true of any of the other PR guys in the other automotive sectors. If you pick stuff, which bear in mind, the company wants to sell those things. So you pick stuff that is perhaps not so glamorous and perhaps isn't getting requested, GR Yaris that we're here to talk about a little later. I've lost track. I mean, I literally couldn't tell you the number of requests for that we've had. It will be in the thousands. But I don't get a huge number of requests from people saying, could I try a Camry? And that will really stand out at me if that comes in. Now, it may be that you try the Camry, you do really well, it's really interesting, and then you say, can I have a go in a GR Yaris? But suddenly I know you.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, how does insurance work? Do you insure per week?
Yeah. No, we so our vehicles are insured by Toyota, and it's a blanket insurance. So if you think your insurance renewal is a bit painful when it comes through the post, you want to try having 120 Press and Heritage cars, some of which are worth £750,000, driven by anybody. In our case, we have a lower age limit and an upper age limit. And for some cars, that lower age limit goes up a little bit.
Yeah.
So you have to be 21, LFA, for example, is 25 because we can't insure it otherwise. The upper age limit is 70, you'll be pleased to hear, so you've got a while.
Nice.
It's all good.
I've got some time.
Yeah. But no, so somebody taking one of our cars is insured to drive it on us. There's no issue with them. What we do, of course, is people sign a piece of paper when they've got the car, which says a number of things, but fundamentally it says we will respect it and look after it, which is the first thing we want. Accidents happen, things happen, but we want people to do their best to look after stuff, try not to curb alloys, all that sort of thing. It also says that if you pick up any speeding tickets or, I don't know, ULEZ fines or whatever it may be during the time you've got the car, that's on you. We won't pay those for you. And that's not because we're being skinflints, it's because if we offered to pay people speeding tickets, you can imagine how they'd drive or park in the case of parking. So people are responsible for that. We'll always deliver a car with a full tank of fuel or a full charge. So generally speaking, unless you're going to drive it for a lot of hours a day or drive it really, really hard, if you've got it for a week, probably only need to refuel it once. And we don't ask for people to top it up when it comes back. It's not a hire car. So hopefully the costs for the person driving the car are minimal, maybe a little bit of fuel, and hopefully no speeding fines.
Yeah. I had exactly one of these things. When I had the Yaris GR, I got one of these fines that now exists in London that they've decided to close a street, but they've not really told you they've closed the street. And they put a small sign up, and this street was shut for like 2 hours, and you get £100. And I was like,
oh gosh. Well, I shouldn't say this, but I lived in London for nearly 13 years, but we live where I am today, right out in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. And I've got to say, I much prefer it out here for that reason.
Yes.
I'm about half a mile from what is known as the Evo Triangle,
Oh,
which
right,
is
yeah.
where Evo and Top Gear do most of their
Yeah.
quick car testing on the road. And we don't get roads closed out here. We've only got about 5 anyway.
How is that nowadays? I've been there a while ago, and I know it's quite a bit of a mecca for car people in the UK. Does it get really busy now, or is it still okay?
No, I think South Wales used to be very popular back in the day. Less so now, I think. But out where we are is still relatively unknown. I'm not going to tell you where it is
No,
for the
don't
sake
do
of your podcast audience. And I'm always really clear when I see friends from the automotive mags, or actually other manufacturers who've started to use the roads around us for launches. I'm always very, very clear. Don't tell anybody. I've got my Sunday fun to have.
Yes, exactly. That's the problem. Like, you go out and you're like, I knew this area here. Now, no one needs to ever find out about it. And then someone does a video and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's there.
Yeah, that's it. Damn the internet.
No, it's it must be. So how did your sort of time get split? What you took day to day? Is it a massive variety?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the bit that isn't always obvious to guys on the media side of the fence is, I'm a senior manager in a big corporation. So large chunks of my day are spent in meetings about finance and God knows what else, in the same way as they would be if I worked for a company that made plant pots or diggers.
Yeah.
That's what keeps the cogs moving. But yeah, in the simplest terms, we start a day with a big meeting of the whole team. That includes a social media team, content, community managers, all the guys. We exchange information, tell each other what's going on during that day, what's just gone on. And then usually the day is a series of meetings. Sometimes it will be broken up with spending time with media. So I do quite a lot of, or try to do a lot of lunches or suppers or breakfast and just spend face time with people.
Yeah.
Particularly in the backwash of COVID. So important to reconnect with people in a proper one-to-one way. And then, of course, there's the events. So they tend to come in chunks. So I'll give you an example. 3 of my guys are currently in Barcelona with media doing the first drives of the new GR 86. I will be spending Wednesday, Thursday and Friday at our press centre in West Sussex, where we're launching the new Lexus NX plug-in hybrid. And then on Sunday night, I get on a plane and I'm out in Barcelona. This is one of the few joys of the job after all the meetings, is people who do what I do and various other roles in companies, Toyota companies, need to drive these cars early. So I'm sorry to tell you, I will be spending a day and a half driving a GR86 around the Park Motor Circuit. And it's actually work. So it's really variable. It's one of the joys of the industry and working in PR is upsides and downsides, but it's really variable, and it's very rare that 2 of my weeks are the same.
That's quite fun. That must be quite mentally
it's great.
stimulating.
I really enjoy it.
This podcast will come out. It will come out after that launch event, which is I don't know when's the embargo release for that car?
Monday. So the guys who are driving the car this week will be able to report. They can report that they're driving it, and many of them already have on social. But the driving impressions, as we call it, in other words, the nuts and bolts, is Monday. But these are pre-production cars. So this is a kind of event we call Meet the Engineers. So it's a very tiny number of media. I think there's 5 on this. That's the amount of slots we have. Yeah. And it's to drive prototypes of the car and spend an evening at dinner with the engineers behind building it, over a glass of wine and a chat. So it's not the finished car, but it's pretty close. So it will give people an idea. And it's a two-way thing, of course, because the engineers love hearing what the journalists think. It gives them, there's still time for them to make adjustments, and if enough journalists say the same thing about an area that can be improved, they'll go away and look at that. And so it's really helpful for us too. So the main media launch for that car will be early next year. We haven't got a date yet, but I would think it will probably be late January, February.
Yeah. I got invited, I think not to the early one, but to a later one. Unfortunately, I've got something else and I can't come. But I was very much looking forward to that. One of the things I've always sort of wondered is when you get feedback from media, and let's just say they've published it. Mm-hmm. This can come in various forms, positive, negative, and all that. But is it often a surprise? Let's say they find something they don't like.
What a good question. Gosh, I don't think it's unexpected that people will have criticisms.
Yeah.
I think it's very rare that you have a car where you think, in my case, GR Yaris is probably the only thing where I've thought, I don't see anything about this that someone's going to, and turned out to be right. But, every car is fundamentally a compromise of some sort.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'd all cost £1 million.
Yeah.
Sometimes the criticisms are really fair. Sometimes there's things about the car. Somebody will say the boot's not big enough, and internally we'll go, you know what, they're right. That is definitely a weak point on this product. So we're really grown up about that. Sometimes criticisms can be, we think, a little unfair. I think every manufacturer would say that. We're quite proud of our things. What's really interesting is some media, and by media I include everybody, whether it be magazines, papers, YouTube, online, podcasts. Some media remember that they're writing or filming for the end user, the customer, and some don't. And that manifests itself in some funny ways. So occasionally you'll be launching a B-class city car, which is all about being affordable and efficient and small and all of those things. And somebody will complain that the turn-in at speed isn't what it could be. And you think,
Classic.
Okay, I know you were driving a 911 GT3 last week, but that's not what this is, And nobody who takes one for a test drive will go, well, I liked it, but I thought the turn-in at speed wasn't what it could be. So, what's really interesting is the very best automotive journalists that we deal with. I'm not going to put people in names, but the absolute best, and you kind of know who they are, top of the industry guys. Yep. They are brilliant at that. They're absolutely brilliant at getting in a car and thinking, who is it who will be reading this piece I write because they're interested in this car, and what do they want to know, and what do they care about, and what they don't. The manual gearbox argument is the great example of this. So all the people who go, well, yeah, but it's not offered with a manual, and we say, but nobody buys manual gearboxes in normal cars. In
that car,
yeah, exactly. So, but I think that's one of the really significant things. So criticism, absolutely fine. If we think it's unfair, we'll challenge it politely. I'll pick up the phone and just say, look, I read that, and that's not the way we've found it. Can I ask why you thought that? But we're always absolutely honest. So, and that's important. I think if if I ring a journalist and say, I don't think this is fair, they know I really think that, because when it is fair, I will take it on the chin. And I think you have to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that there's this sort of, I think, image a lot of people have that no one, specifically YouTubers, get this brush, and it's probably fair, is they will never say anything negative about a car, because they'll, the theory is that you may never get another one. And I think your point about, and a lot of YouTubers, I think myself, when I'm asking to borrow cars, I don't, let's say if I give my opinion on a car, it's generally my opinion of me and in my life. And I don't necessarily try and go in the mindset of the person buying that car, because I'm generally trying to, because I don't drive that many cars, and I generally try to drive cars I'm really interested in. So I am a potential customer, but people can look at me and go, yeah, well, that's your opinion. And I would totally go, that is.
I think that's a good thing though, Sam. I mean, it should be your opinion, and I think always is with media. But example, if I lend you an LFA tomorrow, you're not going to do a segment where you open the boot and go, it's all right, but I don't think you get 4 big Waitrose bags in here, so mark off. You're not going to do it, right? Because you know that is not what that car's for, and that's not why people buy it. If I lent you a Highlander, and it had a small boot, which it doesn't, it's huge,
Yeah.
but if it did, you would perfectly reasonably say, well, hang on a minute, I kind of expected this to be able to carry more stuff. Look at the size of it. It's still your opinion, but you are putting yourself to some degree in the customer's position, because you're recognizing certain cars are designed to do certain things. GR Yaris you had recently, you're not going to get 4 6-foot bits of timber and 20 concrete slabs in it. We'll
No.
sell you a Hilux for that.
No, exactly. And there are absolutely cases where these all fit in. And I think something that we see a bit more of now, thanks to the internet and social media and Instagram and whatever, we see more owners talking about cars. And I always find it tricky. I would say the first people I go to when I'm researching a new car is I'll go to the website and read all the specs and whatnot, but then I'll go to YouTube and probably watch a video from a couple of people. For me, it's normally motoring journalists. Because I want to know the techie, nerdy side of it, and from the people that have driven 100 million cars, and then I'll ask a friend maybe who might be a YouTuber who's also driven a lot of cars, just what their opinion is. There's a certain amount of power that comes from someone that's actually bought one, whatever the car is.
Yeah.
And
God, yeah.
I think some manufacturers really quite dismiss that, quite publicly, actually. Another manufacturer did that recently. Sort of said, like, what are you? You're just an owner. And you're like, well, no, if I'm an owner, I'm actually more important than like anyone else.
Absolutely
to
right.
some extent.
Goodness me. I'm not going to criticise anybody else, but that does make my eyebrows go up. And we're the opposite. For our social media teams, who are all, by the way, we don't use agencies or people off in buildings.
Yeah.
They're in our building and they work for us full time. Engagement is king for us. I mean, from a very boring business point of view, that's what we set as our priorities on social media, is not numbers, it's engagement. And that engagement can be negative, and we really like it. I know this sounds bizarre, but I've seen some of the guys on our community management team, they'll get somebody on Insta saying, I hate the Toyota Prius, it's a piece of crap and should never have been invented. And they will deliberately engage with that person and say, oh, gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. Why do you think that?
Yeah.
And they'll have a conversation. They might not change that person's mind, but the person who said it almost invariably is grateful for them coming back and engaging and having the conversation and seeking their opinion. And of course, other people see that happening too. And it's the same with owners. Owners are absolutely king. If you have chosen to spend your own hard-earned money on one of our products, then your voice is without doubt the most important voice.
Yeah, it's your point about engaging is huge. When you see manufacturers just like batting them away, and then there's so many, these things pop into my mind of a certain manufacturer doing something, but I'm going to sort of avoid it. But a manufacturer might redesign a car. Everyone says they don't like the redesign, and then the manufacturer says, well, you're all wrong. And it's just like,
well, yeah. But the engagement is really important. I mean, the social media has its pros and cons, as we all know. We're not here to talk about that in the round, but for a company like us, earlier we talked about the prism through which media stuff goes to reach customers. Social media avoids that prism. We can talk directly to customers, potential customers, ex-customers, or even people who hate us and will never be our customers. We can talk to all those people. We can listen to them. We can tell them our point of view. We can maybe try to change their minds if they're not positive, or we can thank them if they are. That's been a real sea change for companies, not just automotive companies. And I think some do it really, really well. Pre-COVID, there were a couple of airlines that I used to look at who were particularly brilliant. They were smaller airlines, actually, but just brilliant at really being there and really quickly. So, our response times are the quickest in automotive online. So our guys will get back to you. They may not always have an answer, but they'll be there to say, hear what you say, see your question. I need to ask somebody about this, but I'll be back to you.
Yeah.
And it makes such a big difference. We all do it in our daily lives, don't we? You have a question about a product or something. Maybe you go to Twitter, because that's quite a good place for that, and ask the company. If you get a response 20 minutes later saying, oh yeah, here's the answer, it feels great. It feels like somebody cares.
Yeah, it makes. That was going to be actually one of my questions of how this change has been sort of felt by you guys, of the ability to. You've just removed that barrier, which was, you go and do market research and then you do all that sort of stuff. Now it's just like you and the world, and you can interact. What?
It's really good for the sort of quantitative stuff. So it's great for customer service. It's great for answering questions. Which oil do I need for my Yaris? And how do I do this? Or I can't get hold of my dealer, or whatever it may be. And it's really good for car fun stuff. Having conversations about, somebody the other day was talking to our community managers about the Toyota Tundra, which is a huge pickup truck that's available in America. It's not available here because it wouldn't fit down any of the streets. And they were talking about why we don't import it here. And the community manager was saying, well, I really wish we would. I keep making this point in the office, but that's why they won't put me in charge of product investment. But where it's not good, not good is the wrong phrase. Where it doesn't work and shouldn't work is the sort of qualitative. So it's no good us saying this car that we make is better than this car that these guys over here make.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to believe us, right? We might be right, it might be, but no one's going to believe us. And I think what will never be lost is the vital importance of that third-party expert view, whether it's a YouTuber or a podcast or an automotive journalist or whoever it is. But that person is a real expert and has a real understanding, who says to you through whichever media you use, this is a good thing and it's better than that one there. That's always going to be vital in being a persuasive factor for people to buy things. And that's why, really back to your earlier question, that's why we have to take criticism on the chin. I think there's a perception out there that our industry would love it if we had this group of really compliant media who just did what we said and wrote what we asked them to. Now, there may be some people who think like that, but I think they're very short-sighted if they do, because if you have a group of yes men and women, suddenly their influence, they may still have the audience, but their influence ebbs away if you're never honest about how you feel. So from our point of view, I'd rather take the odd bit of criticism, which is worth it for those days when people say this thing here is just fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're following, like if I have a favorite journalist that I think, their opinion really count, like we align. I think people sort of find the person, wherever it is, where they're like, that person likes the stuff that I like.
Yeah.
And then if they say that's good, you're like, I think it's probably going to be good. I think but it takes 5 minutes to light that on fire. If someone just goes and waffles about something and is like, this is great, it can just disappear overnight.
Yeah, I think that's right. We all find people that we resonate with, don't we? It would be wrong of me to name names, and I won't, but there's one very senior road tester in particular who absolutely sort of sees cars the way I see cars. And that person, particularly old cars is part of my passion, not just ones made by us, I hasten to add. He's the guy I ring up when I want some advice about something, or when, a friend of mine phones up and says, I'm thinking of buying this, it's not one of ours. That's the guy I'll ring up and go, what do I tell him? I think we've all got one of those. So I've told him he can't retire because I'm going to need him.
Yeah. But I don't know whether those people they might retire, but they're not going to stop driving cars.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think also that a number of them, when they get to a very senior level, are really passionate about passing on that expertise. And if you look at Autocar, for example, so you take Steve Cropley, who's really the doyen of British motoring journalists, even though he's Australian. But, Steve, I don't know how old Steve is now. I mean, he's possibly even in his early 70s, but utterly brilliant journalist, great driver, but so passionate about bringing through a new and more diverse group of young people into that industry. And I think Autocar in 10, 15 years' time will absolutely feel the benefit of that. Well, it already does because he's been doing it for years, but really good example of somebody who really cares, and we talked about this earlier, about getting new people in with new points of view and new ways of looking at things.
Yeah, That's really important. And I think a lot of people might look at the sort of the pool of journalists that are out there, and it is much better than it used to be. Those people, like, that has got much broader now, and it needs to be done. And I think a lot of people go, a prime example of this was previously a new car's been launched, a fast something track special, and someone will get invited on the launch that's not a very good driver. I've always backed up those people. People go like, oh, I should be there, I'm a better driver. And like, as you've pointed out before, it's not about how good a driver you are. It's about like how much your audience relates to you and the wider picture. But I always thought that was interesting. Like, actually, that person's view is probably more important, maybe, than the person that's a professional Le Mans driver, because that is the experience that the buyer is probably going to have driving that car. Now, you can get, if we start going super niche, then the other drivers, but your average Joe driving a car, it's really important to know what average Joe, whoever average Joe is.
Completely.
Thinks.
Yeah, completely. You're right. And this is not helped by the fact that even in normal life away from the industry that you and I are both around, everybody thinks they're Hanno Mikkola. Absolutely everybody. I have particularly men. I've never met a man in particular who'll go, well, I'm an average driver at best. I'm not very good. I've never met one. And I'm in my 40s. So it is interesting. We had I won't tell you what, but a few years ago we launched something pretty quick at a racetrack in Spain. One of the young journalists, there's a particular corner there which has a bit of an adverse camber kick on the top of it, and you've got to be really careful of it. Obviously all in the briefings. Anyway, he wasn't really careful of it and had a very big off backwards and totaled the car. He was fine. And I spent, I don't know, an hour with him in the sort of pit lane going, it doesn't matter. It's just metal and plastic. As long as you're all right, have a cup of tea, calm down, it's fine, don't worry. And he finally was all right. Anyway, then wrote a piece saying he liked it, but it could be faster. And didn't mention the fact that he crashed it. Which I thought, all right, fair enough. Maybe you think it could be faster, but I think if you're going to say that, it's beholden on you to say, although I did lose control of it and total it.
Yeah. I could not control it, and I wrote off the car.
But it should be quicker.
Is that in that situation? Does that person get invited back, or the fact they crashed?
I mean, yes, that we don't ban people, except for the only times it's happened. It's incredibly rare. I mean, it takes years, but anybody who if, let's say you were picked up speeding at 3-figure speeds. We would take the view that you're irresponsible and you shouldn't be in our cars. And we'd do that through your editor if you had one. Obviously, anything to do with drink, drugs, dangerous driving, anything like that, clearly, that is deeply unprofessional and we would stop. On racetracks, same thing applies. I think as long as people are not, and in fairness to this guy, he wasn't driving like an idiot. It was just, he'd just gone slightly outside his comfort envelope.
Got it wrong.
Which is really easy to do on a racetrack, and particularly easy to do when you're driving with other people. So, it happens to me all the time. I'll get on a track, and some of the people around me are vastly faster than I am. Most, my team would tell you, in fact. But, you have to know, I can't keep up with that guy. I'm not going to take his breaking point and his line because I don't have his skill set. And I think that probably comes with age, the advantage of being an old fart. And this was a young lad, I think was just trying to keep up with quicker people and got it wrong. But no, there's no suggestion of not being invited back. I wasn't massively impressed with the end piece in terms of what he said, but I get to tell the story like this, so it's probably been worth it long term.
Yeah, exactly. Your point about driving on track is funny because I've done a reasonable amount of racing and whatnot, and often you come back in and you'll look at the data, and someone will tell you, okay, you can do a couple of miles an hour faster through that corner, or you can brake later, or whatever. And the missing link between that and you driving is often, yes, technically it might be possible, if you do everything perfectly. But you might not know how to brake correctly, and therefore you follow that person through that corner, and they are doing stuff completely differently to you, and off you go.
Yeah, totally right, Sam. And you know that thing when you know, I have no pretensions to being quick on a racetrack. I'm not.
Yeah.
I will say I'm quick in the dirt. So you put me in a truck or a rally car, I can do that, but not on a track. But what's amazing, and you must have experienced this, is when you go out with a proper pro, and the difference. I mean, it's chalk and cheese. You know, even those of us who have spent a lot of time going around tracks, it's like they're on a different planet. They are so much faster and not putting in any effort at all.
No.
I've got a lovely piece of video somewhere years ago. I was lucky enough, Freddie Asbo, the drift racer, took me in his ethanol-powered GT86, which is 1,000 brake horsepower, on the ice in Finland.
Okay.
And so we're completely sideways, doing probably 3 figures speed, and there are blue flames coming out of the double vents in the bonnet, about 3 feet long. It's absolutely deafening. And he's looking over at me. He's a right-hand drive car, and he's looking over at me like this, and he's talking about the car his mate has bought. So he's literally going, and I said to him, well, you wouldn't, would you? And my face is pressed up against the window, going faster than I could dream of going. And he's not even at 50%. He's not even trying. And it's just, you know, they're not like us, as that famous phrase goes.
They're not. And it's almost like, because if you go out, the best is when you go out go to a track and it's your car. So you've driven it or you're driving it, and then they drive it. And it's like they're driving a different car. Right? And the more you learn like how that is the case and whatnot. But they're so smooth and everything, like you can just carry more speed everywhere. And like you said, they're just chilling. Like one hand, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And
it's not even any effort.
You go through the same corner, like fully kind of like crossed up. And you're like, I'm at the limit.
It's all a terrible drama. And, you know, they're sat in the passenger seat thinking, oh, God. Yeah.
So have you done a bit of rallying?
Co-driving rallying years ago when I was younger. But I grew up in Africa. So my sort of passion is stupid trucks. Really, it's not very subtle, is it? But yeah, I'm a big fan of our Dakar efforts, and actually very sad that this last couple of years, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do a trip to the Dakar to see the Gazoo team out there. I think that will be the same come January, but fingers crossed, 2023. I'm hoping finally to get some media out to that. Because it's a really special kind of event. And I think it's a really special kind of racing. I mean, you should remember Alonso chose to do it for us whilst he was part of our World Endurance Car Programme, with which, of course, he won a World Championship. But yeah, it's a mad kind of racing in that any kind of racing where you're going fast enough to hurt yourself, but also you could lose by getting lost, has got something to be said for it.
Yeah, a friend of mine, or a couple of friends of mine, they were going to be doing the Dakar this year, and they were putting a team together. Wow. And they were like, hey, Sam, like up to a few of us, like, who wants to drive? Like, do you want to have a go? And, you know, we need to go and do various stages and whatnot and prep and whatever. And I was like, no, thank you. And one of the guys, he was like, I was shocked. I thought you'd be all over it. You love racing, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but have you ever watched a Dakar?
Yeah.
It looks awful.
You can really, you can get yourself into some serious trouble out there with that sort of thing. Oddly enough, Charlie's book, the guy who with Ewan McGregor went around the world on bikes.
Yes.
He trained with Cy Pavey to do a Dakar on motorbikes, which is off the scale brutal, by the way. I'm just like nothing else. And his book about that is fascinating because the things you don't realise, the speed that the top-end cars are coming past you from all sorts of different directions out in the dunes. You know, there can be a 70-mile-an-hour speed difference when you're on it. It's just an incredible thing. So yeah, definitely worth a read.
Yeah, no, I'll check that out. And those are the sorts of things that you don't get to pick up. You don't get that from the coverage or anything like that, and then someone talks about it. A bit like, although I imagine that's significantly more sketchy than endurance racing, where you've got significant multi-class differences. So maybe like a VLN race, where you've got a 2 Series or whatever going around, and then a GT3 car, and just getting batted out the way.
It's frightening, isn't it? I was watching some onboard footage from our TS050, so the previous generation Le Mans winning, World Championship winning endurance car, with Mike Conway driving. And I should say, actually, it'd be remiss of me, given it was yesterday, Mike Conway world champion again as of Sunday in our supercar. But it was onboard footage down the Mulsanne at night. So Mike is probably doing, given the weather conditions and the aero on the car, 215, something like that, mph, in the dark, down the Mulsanne. And it comes to the bottom, and one of the gentleman racers, as we call them, in a Ferrari, had got his line wrong into the first S out of the Mulsanne, and was in the wrong part of the track. And Mike must have been doing twice his speed when he came on him. And he missed him because... Mike Conway, like all those guys, has got the reactions of a housefly. It's amazing. But the speed difference was just terrifying. It was literally like coming around a corner on a British B road to find a brick wall.
Yeah. And somehow surviving.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's mad. It's mad. And those cars, I think because now, what are we in? Hypercars. Are Toyota running a hypercar? They are. Or are they doing?
We've just won the initial World Championship. So the 8 Hours of Bahrain, we'd actually won it in the previous Bahrain race, but we didn't know which of our drivers' teams would be World Champions. So we are the inaugural Hypercar World Champions. We had a 1-2 in the 8 Hours of Bahrain at the weekend, and the 3 drivers that include Britain's Mike Conway are World Champions.
Yeah, awesome. Well done.
Yeah. Also winning the World Rally Championship at the same time, he says, pulling the company klaxon.
Yes. So GR or Yaris GR, I think I've got that
GR
wrong
Yaris.
a lot way around. GR Yaris. It was made to be a WRC car, and then wasn't a WRC car, but now it is a WRC car.
Almost, Sam. It was... So it was built to homologate what would have been the new rally car.
Yeah.
So WRC had said that there would be new cars for 2020, from memory. And obviously, as you understand, there are some really strict rules in WRC about how far you can go from the road car that your vehicle's based on.
Right.
Much tighter than people think, actually. So the shape of the car is vital. You can't make massive changes to the shape of the car. The materials from which your road car body is made, your race car body will be made from. So if you build the whole thing out of steel, you've got a heavy race car.
Okay.
Generally speaking, what happens these days, at least, maybe it used to be different in the 80s and 90s, is manufacturers will take a car that is, I don't want to talk about individuals, but because of the shape, the size of rally cars, that's generally going to be a B or a C segment car. Probably a car that's been designed to be economical, efficient, family shopping car. No names mentioned, but you can think of a long list of them. And then they turn that into a mad rally car, but within those rules. The other thing you can do is to build a car purely as a homologation base. So you say, this makes no sense economically at all. We'll build the car to give us the best possible rally car. So if you look at GR Yaris, that mad sloping roof at the back that's really low, that's all about getting a massive wing on the back of the rally car, because you're not allowed to change that angle. Now, that would never get through sign-off normally. If you're trying to sell, I don't know, 1 million of those cars a year around the world to Mr. and Mrs. Bloggs to go to Sainsbury's. Well, no, you want a roof that, the same is true of the materials from which it's built. There's all sorts of things. The carbon fibre weave on the roof was specifically designed for that. We've got some great video, actually, of Jari Matti Latvala, who used to be one of our WRC drivers, now runs the team, jumping up and down on it in a woodland in Finland, going, "It will break, it will break," and that classic rally driver attempt to test something.
Yeah.
So that whole car was built to homologate what would have been the new race car. And then what happened was COVID hit. So by the way, we're always going to sell a road version because you have to.
Yeah.
You have to have 25,000 globally to base your rally car on. And then COVID arrived, and the FIA and WRC very reasonably said, in this environment, teams haven't got the ability to test a new car as much as they like, but more importantly, it's money. Given the huge amount of pain the world was in, it wasn't reasonable to expect people to go out and spend many millions of pounds building a completely new race car. So they said, what we'll do is we'll stick with the ones we've got up until the hybrid era comes in, which is, of course, next year. And what that meant was that GR Yaris was built to homologate a race car that never raced. WRC said, keep the cars you've got, and then do the change for the hybrid era, which starts next year, which had always been the plan.
Okay.
So what that means is the GR Yaris was it's a genuine homologation special. The fact that the race car it was built to homologate never raced is neither here nor there. But they don't really. You think back to Ford RS2000, for example. That was a homologation special. There are various others, but it doesn't really happen though because it literally makes no sense.
Yeah.
And GR Yaris would not have got through any one of the checks that normally would come before a car goes into production at Toyota because it's bonkers. But luckily for us, the guy who runs the company, Akio Toyoda, who's the big boss, is a massive race fan and takes the view that if we stop building fun cars, we've done something wrong. So we will always do that. So the chief engineer, when you talk to him, it was hilarious. He'd spent years building other things. And when he came to build this one, he'd sort of say, Tommy Mackinnon from the rally team, they were really closely involved with the whole development of the car for obvious reasons, because it's a homologation car.
Yeah.
He wants this and he wants that. And all of the accountants at Toyota would go, but that's insane. And he'd go, have you met Mr. Toyoda? All right, signed off. So this thing it's incredible. It shouldn't exist, really, in the modern world. It's just a joy that it does.
It must be really cool being part of a company during like this sort of period of time as well. Like I know Toyota have done it significantly over the past and whatnot, but to have this project come out and be received so well by everyone, obviously, it must be a really cool thing.
Wonderful. I mean, it's been wonderful. I've never known anything like it, but guys who've been in the industry a lot longer, it's genuinely a generational car. I mean, they come along, right? Not fair for me to pick up other things, but other people have made things that are just all-time greats, right, over the years. And there's no doubt this is one. I mean, I would say that, but it's true. It really is something very, very special. And you're right. We're lucky the company's led by somebody who, whilst his drive is improve everything we make, do better, we're selling cars in 170 countries. So, we're a huge global business. And the fact that Akio takes the time out to say, let's build this mad thing as well, because it's fun and people will like it, we're really lucky that he's running the ship, I think.
How many cars do Toyota sell a year or make?
Oh, globally? What a horrible question. I don't know the answer to that. I know roughly. I mean, many millions is the answer.
Yeah.
I want to say somewhere around the 10 million mark. A lot in 170 countries.
Yeah. So when you look at something like GR Yaris, which how many are there going to be? Because I know it was an initial production run, but I feel like there's going to be more.
It's a good question. I don't know if there are or there aren't. We had to build 25,000 for the homologation rules, and we said we'd do that. And that we have not quite done, but because there's orders for next year and so on.
Yeah.
But in the UK, they're all sold. This year, next year's allocation is sold, so the car is, if you will, sold out. And I think it's pretty much the same everywhere. The company hasn't yet decided at headquarters whether it's going to make the car again after that 25,000.
Okay.
And I think there are really interesting arguments both ways, right? One argument says, keep it really exclusive, and the other one says, well, if people want it, well, they still can. have a car like this with this kind of power plant, let them have it. So we'll see which way the big bosses decide. But I hope we'll know sometime during next year. And in the UK, we're taking expressions of interest rather than orders. We can't take orders for something that may not exist, which isn't really a waiting list, but at least we will go back to people when we know one way or the other.
No, it's because I sort of want to know how much of the production cost of those cars has been sort of allocated to marketing versus, and like presumably they don't really make any money, or they might. No. They must make a little bit.
No,
maybe. Not really.
I'm not going to go into specifics for obvious reasons. It is not a car that is designed to make money. I think I'd put it that way and not go any further. Really interestingly, the marketing of GR Yaris has been very small, actually. And there's probably three reasons for that. One is volume. So if you're trying to sell, I don't know, 150,000 of something, in Western Europe alone in 6 months, you need a lot of marketing because you need to make sure a lot of people know about it. So small volume, that's the first thing. I think the second thing is Gazoo Racing, who build the car, the Gazoo Racing company, who also make Supra, of course, and will make the GR86 when that arrives. Their marketing comes in the form of winning world championships. So as we've discussed earlier in the podcast, WEC, WRC, Dakar, these sorts of things. And lots of other race series, by the way, that they're in. Lots of domestic series in Japan, some interesting stuff in America. Gazoo now have a NASCAR entry in the US. So that is kind of the marketing for Gazoo, is world championship winning elite level motorsport. I think the challenge for us is just linking the Gazoo Racing company that make the car, which is part of the racing part, with those things, which I think we've done pretty well. Economically speaking, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Let's just leave it at that.
I think I totally agree with the view that it's money well spent, and it will bring a lot of people to the brand. I personally think, because I've seen Toyota racing in WEC or something, and you go, okay, they do all this crazy high-end racing, and then you go, well, where's the road car? Where's any road cars that link to this? And these sorts of projects definitely sort of, I think, bring that in, and then people go, oh, I really like that, the sort of enthusiast, which is not the general market. I really like that product. And then they start to branch out into other products in the range.
I'll tell you a sort of internal secret that's quite interesting. One of the purposes of the whole Gazoo thing, the racing part of it, sure, it's about winning races and brand association, all the things you quite rightly point out. But there's an interesting thing that happens inside Toyota as well, which people don't see. So the way we work, we're quite famous for our production system and the way we go about things, and that's now used by the NHS in England, amongst others. It's great, and it really works, but it's very careful and very slow and very exact. And that doesn't work in the world of racing, as you've done plenty of it. You've got to make decisions. How are we going to fix this? We'll do that. Out you go. So what we've done globally is quite a lot of the guys from Gazoo Racing will go and do a 1 or 2 year attachment in normal Toyota. It might be a factory, it might be at HQ, and they bring with them that kind of amazing racing can-do, stop talking about it and do it attitude. But equally, a lot of guys from the normal Toyota company will go and do a 1 or 2 year stint within the Gazoo Racing part of the business. Bringing with them that, that's all very well, but if you stop and think about it for 30 seconds, and what we're finding is, of course, they're both right, not necessarily at the same time, and that cross-pollination of ways of working is really helping across both pieces.
No, that's sounds like a brilliant idea. Yeah, absolutely.
And sadly, not mine. Otherwise, I could retire.
Not yet. Maybe you'll come up with something else.
Fingers crossed.
With actually the GR Yaris, it's, in terms of cars I've driven, and my only slight fault with it, if I had to say there's one fault, is it's too good at what it's designed to do. So it's the only car I've gotten in a while, I can't really think of another car I've driven that's been like this. You take to a really bumpy B road and you just go down it, and it just goes down it. Like, serious pace, as much as you want, and it just keeps going, and you go, I think I could go faster and faster and faster, which I can see makes it an incredible rally car.
Yeah.
And also pretty fun. But in my personal driving sort of development changes, I'm erring towards things that are a bit more sketchy.
Okay.
And my only thing with that is I feel like it could be a little bit more on the edge. But I imagine
it's interesting.
Actually you could do, like some people have done, and I've not driven any of the cars, do some suspension, just, setup tweaks. And it would be...
make it worse.
Make it worse. Make it on paper worse, slower, and Sam might enjoy it a little bit. But other than that, I thought it was, as a car and a way of getting down a road, it was unbelievably impressive, especially for the price.
Yeah, that was Akio's instruction. So he was really clear during the development phase of the car to the whole company. He said, and his exact phrase was, "We're not making a Fabergé egg." So what he meant was, sure, we could, I'll be honest with you, we could probably have charged 50 grand for that.
Yeah.
Frankly, and still sold them all. Seriously. It's that good a thing, and that there aren't many of them. He was really clear it was an enthusiast car, and it had to be within reach of enthusiasts. Which is why it makes even less economic sense now that I've told you that than before. In terms of the sketchiness, really interesting. I kind of know what you mean. It is brilliant at what it does because it has that rally pedigree. You can make it sketchy, but you just have to get outside your envelope, and that's probably not sensibly possible on the public road.
And that is, I've not driven one on track, and I imagine on track it will have all of the hoonability.
Yeah,
I just felt like on the road I was like, I'm not pushing it to this
You're
level.
not going to get to that level. Yeah,
it's too capable.
I think what you'll
above
see
me anyway.
Sorry, I think what you'll see eventually is they will enter club rallying. So you'll see them stripped out, roll caged, and into club rallying, which is the obvious place, to take one. I know Chief Engineer always said he would love to be able to offer a pre-roll cage stripped out version to take racing. And he would still like to do that. Whether he ever will, I don't know. But I think that's its natural environment. I'll tell you a quick funny story. I don't know if you know Jim Cameron from Mission Motorsport.
No, I know I've come across him, but
yeah.
Don't know.
So Jim used to be he's an ARDS instructor. Used to be a Nürburgring instructor, as well as an ex-soldier. He's very, very fast. Don't tell him I said that though, because he's a mate of mine, and I don't want to compliment him. But we were at the Goodwood, the Invitational for Mission Motorsport, the services charity, a couple of months ago. And at the end of the day, Jim jumped in one of the GR Yarises, and there was a guy there who shall remain nameless who was driving a 911. And on the straights at Goodwood, the Porsche was just pulling away, as you'd expect. Not massively, but a bit, Yeah. In the corners, Jim was tucked right up behind him, flashing his lights. And, I would think that Porsche was worth 4 times what the little GR was. And they are blisteringly quick in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, which is not me. But yeah, they do shift.
It's always fun, and the point about keeping it cheap, I think, is amazing, because if you read an Evo magazine or something, and you just pick the cars that everyone's like, this is the driver's car of the year or whatever, they're all really expensive. Every now and then there's something less expensive.
Yeah.
But generally it's all really expensive. And then for pretty much universally a lot of people to come out and go, no, but this car is really good. Just ignore everything else. It's really good. And it just also so happens to cost like 30-ish grand.
Yeah.
Right.
We're really proud of it. Honestly, really proud of it in that sense. You can, if you think of LFA, which is the other end of the spectrum. Yeah. So LFA is go and do what you can do and don't worry about the cost. And I think it's well known that the company, not only didn't make money on LFAs, but lost money on LFAs. I don't think that's a secret, because it was a technology platform for Lexus. It was to show what can be done. But it's an amazing thing, the LFA, but it is this, now £750,000 kind of Fabergé egg. And at the other end of the scale, we've taken the same approach to something which, costs 31 grand, which
Yeah.
is probably about the same as a kind of set of LFA wheels, I should think. I haven't checked, but
Yeah, I think that needs to be applauded. I can't remember whether it was still going to happen. Are we going to see a road car version of the hypercar? Unknown.
that's a good question. We've always said that that's the intention. I think the reality will be, given everything that's happened in this last 2 or 3 years, it's clearly not a priority.
Yeah.
I think, given production problems, COVID in Southeast Asia and all sorts of things, I think the company's focus is on keeping its core business where it needs to be. But there's no doubt, if you look at the product range and Akio's worldview, that it remains in the wheelhouse. I don't think, from a sporting point of view, when you look across the Toyota piece, and if you add in Lexus, GR Yaris is there, new GR86, which is a rear-wheel drive manual coupe. Not many people making those. Then Supra, pure sports two-seater, not many people making those. And so you go up, and then the big V8 stuff on the Lexus side. So we have a passion for performance cars, and the fact that we do so well with hybrid allows us to produce them because of our CAFE CO2 fleet emissions, known as CAFE levels, are very low compared to most big manufacturers.
Yeah.
So I hope it will come, but I think right now it's one of those things that can't be a priority for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Your point about the fleet emissions. I was talking to someone from Toyota recently. We were talking about the fleet emissions and why Toyota hasn't had tons of electric cars so far. And essentially, well, at that point, you didn't need to, or don't need to, anywhere near the same level as other manufacturers because of so many hybrids. And moving forward, presumably we're going to see some more battery electric vehicles.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you also have the Mirai. Is it the Mirai?
Mirai, yeah.
Which is
hydrogen EV.
Hydrogen EV.
Yeah. So the way it works is it's an EV, same as any other BEV, but the power for the battery is created through a hydrogen fuel cell rather than by plugging in the electricity to come into the car from outside. So the electricity is made within the car.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like a little generator.
Yeah, in principle, yes, a sort of hydrogen generator, if you will.
Do you sell a lot of those, like in the UK?
Well, not a lot. I think, understandably, it's a young technology, and right now the infrastructure to support hydrogen is not there in a sort of daily use fashion. Yeah, but yeah, fair few. You'll see the Met Police run quite a lot of them. Quite a lot of local authorities run them, and various others. So yeah, it's a small volume car right now, and will be for a while until that infrastructure catches up. I guess the key point to make to you, Sam, is Toyota's worldview is technology neutral. So Toyota has never said this technology over here is the way forward to lowering emissions, because we don't believe that can work. We think the way you lower emissions is by offering customers a zero emissions or low emissions car that works for them, not just one that works for you. And if you look at the world the way Toyota does, which is globally, huge presence in Africa, Asia, and so on, you kind of have to do that. We don't just sell cars in relatively affluent Western Europe. So yeah, BEVs, absolutely. The BZ4X, the first bespoke Toyota BEV, will be here next year. We pulled the covers off that about 3 weeks ago, globally. That's a completely new platform. Already Lexus has one with UX300E, and both brands will have more, there's no doubt. More plug-ins, more BEVs, hybrids still, because they're a really important part of lowering emissions and getting people into an affordable electrified car out of their ICE car, and hydrogen as well. So all four of those technologies.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I saw one of those Mirais just drive past me the other day, and I was like, oh, that's a hydrogen vehicle. That's different. And we definitely seem, at the moment, it's very much being talked about. Everyone needs to push to convert to EV. And as much as I have a small EV that I use around town, I actually think it's brilliant. I know it's not necessarily the solution for everything. They're very heavy.
Yeah.
There are other options that might be better if developed more and whatnot. And I think at the moment we're seeing a lot of government push towards EVs, which is rightly or wrongly. I think we need change, but we just need you need your Toyotas and your engineers to say, okay, we need to get to this is the end result. How do we get there? Work you guys go and play, and then the market try and work it out.
Yeah,
because it's not the catch-all solution, definitely.
BVs are obviously a massive part of the future, no doubt about it, and they're great. And like you, I really enjoy using them. But you have to make sure you're meeting people's needs. So if you're a Cumbrian hill farmer, it's no good saying to that guy, get out of your Land Rover or your Hilux or whatever it is you choose to use, and use this little BV. You can't, right? Now, eventually that will change. But it may be that hydrogen EVs end up being the solution not only for heavy goods vehicles, but for those big, heavy working vehicles, off-road vehicles, and so on. Again, when you look at Africa, where we're the market leader in Africa, it may well be that hydrogen in places like that, where you can't have a place to plug your car in Namibia every 6 miles, maybe hydrogen stations are going to be the answer. So from Toyota's point of view, we invest in all of these technologies, BEV included, and have done. But you're right. I'm careful what I say because I can't talk about other manufacturers. We haven't had the fiscal need to sell a lot of BEVs at a negligible profit or a loss. Yeah. Because we haven't been facing the fines for fleet CO2 that some others have. So when people say Toyota's behind the curve, it's not that we're behind. And I'd remind you, we've been selling electrified vehicles since 1997. People used to laugh at us for that, and they're certainly not laughing anymore. Yeah. But we're not behind the curve. We just haven't needed to do it in the same way that some other manufacturers have, with huge numbers of EVs now. But we are coming with EVs. Toyota next year, Lexus already here. And with 25 years of battery experience behind us, I think you'll find they'll be pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Who was I talking to? Someone about Land Cruisers. What is the most popular Toyota? Globally?
Yeah. Globally. Or UK, I don't...
Gosh, that's difficult. In the UK, it's Yaris. Mm-hmm. Globally, I want to say the answer to that is Camry. Okay. I want to say, because of Camrys in America selling huge numbers, but it looks so different where you go. So the biggest selling vehicle in South Africa is the Toyota Hilux, not the biggest selling pickup, the biggest selling vehicle. Yeah. We sell huge numbers of those and Land Cruisers across Africa and Australasia. Don't sell that many Land Cruisers in the UK, but you can't move for them in other parts of the world. So it looks, it's really interesting when you look at a map of the world from our sales, really different things in different places. But I reckon Camry is probably still the number one globally. Somebody will watch this and immediately put in the comments, this bloke doesn't know what he's talking about. It's been something else for months. So my apologies if I've got that wrong.
I think it's all good. Right. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions. I didn't tell you about this, but the whole point is I don't tell you about this. Okay. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
Yes, I do. It was driving through the Namibian desert. I was in a Hilux, but we were actually launching a new Land Cruiser at the time. And we weren't on any kind of roads at all. It was literally compass point to compass point for about 300 miles, day and night. Wow. Ending up by the sea in a tented enclosure that we'd built. And we went fishing off the beach with a couple of beers. So, yeah, that takes some beating.
That sounds wicked.
It was amazing. Yeah, a real privilege.
Okay, if you could only drive one car for the rest of your life, okay, there's a caveat. You're one car, rest of your life, and then you've got £500 for something else on the side.
Oh, this is a terrible question to ask a PR because it might not be one of ours, and then I'll be in trouble.
That's all right.
can the one car cost anything? Money, no object.
Anything, yeah.
I think I would have one of the Aston Martin DB4 shooting brakes, of which they made 4.
Ooh, nice.
So my apologies to my bosses at Toyota and Lexus. But yeah, those have always had a place in my heart. And my £500, can I get a Panda 4x4 for 500 quid?
I hope so.
I'm going to say, I don't care if it's full of rust, I'll weld it.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah, that'd be a good duo. Be sorted. What do you think is the most undervalued car at the moment?
In terms of what I think is going to be worth more down the line?
Yes.
That is a vicious question. It might be GR Yaris, if we decide not to make any more.
If you decide not to make it, yeah.
Yeah, could well be GR Yaris. Other than that, God, that's really different. No, I think I'd probably say our little mad Yaris.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, it's not undervalued in that sense. Everybody loves it, but it's if we don't make any more, that'll be it. Yeah. There'll only be 25,000.
And we might get a little GR Yaris Plus, maybe.
Who can say? I mean, I really hope we continue to make it. And I guess if we continue to make it, we'll do what we do with all cars, which is update it as we go along.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would dearly love us still to be making it in, 10 years' time, but they won't put me in charge of these things, Sam. I keep asking.
Keep pushing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you Googling? What are you looking up, researching, interested in?
I'm interested in it because I bought it. Does that count?
Yes.
It is a 1978 Reliant Scimitar in a magnificent shade of brown with an even more magnificent shade of brown on the interior, which I bought last February, March. This February, March 21, and have been restoring, and is now on the road again, having been in a barn for 21 years without moving a wheel. Nice. 3 litre V6 front mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, manual British shooting brake. Don't get many of those. Cool. So
that is cool.
I love the thing. It is so 70s. It is ridiculous. So I'm deeply in love with that, and because it's finally on the road, I keep taking it out for pointless drives I don't need to, and which has meant I've stopped looking at Car and Classic and things and new car websites for a while because I've got my one, but the bug will come back. That's
cool. What drew you to the Scimitar?
I'd always really liked the shape of them, and I'd always thought they were really undervalued. Back to your previous question, and I had an old Porsche and a Saab 900, both of which I'd sold to friends in both cases.
Yeah.
Which meant I didn't have an old car. I just had a couple of old motorbikes, and I can't live without something to work on. I can't, some excuse to escape to the garage. So I wanted something that was not expensive because money from those 2 other vehicles went into other boring domestic things. Yeah. So I wanted something not too expensive that had some character and raised a smile. Didn't take itself too seriously, but was fun to drive. And this ticked all the boxes. And annoyingly, I found one really quickly. So that ruined my chances of getting away with it.
Has it been a labour of love or a labour of pain?
It started as a labour of love, like all restorations, and then became a labour of pain, like all restorations. Inevitably, there's always something you weren't expecting. And in my case, when I'd done everything else, a huge amounts of chassis and you name it, we'd done it. I mean, tons of stuff. And I had no heating. And what turned out to be the heater matrix. And the only way to change a heater matrix, which by the way costs 60 quid, that's it, is to take the entire dash out.
Oh.
Every single piece. So for a while I hated it. And Paul Cowland, from the TV, Paul is a really good friend of mine. And I rang Paul and said, I've fallen out of love with this car. And he said, get it fixed ASAP. Because otherwise it will just sit there and you'll hate it. And it was the right piece of advice. So it cost a bit more money than I was hoping, and I couldn't do it myself because electrics and I don't get on. But now I love it again,
That's good.
but it will return to being painful soon because it's a 1970s British car.
That's what they do, and
Yeah.
you get to spend time working on it and whatnot.
Yes, that's right, and an awful lot of time, as it turns out. My wife has views about the old cars and bikes, which I don't think I need to share with you, but you can imagine.
Right, final question. 5-car garage, unlimited value.
Wow. Okay. Gosh. First thing that's going in there, and I could have answered this to any of your other questions actually, would be a Land Cruiser Troopy, if you know what that is.
Ooh, don't know what that is.
This is a 70 series Land Cruiser that was built for the Australian Army and then made publicly available. We still make them, 70 series Land Cruisers. So it's 2-door with a rear hatch, and it's just the coolest thing. It's like a kind of massively pumped up Defender. So that's going in there. GR Yaris is going in there because I'm not allowed one. Staff aren't allowed to buy them. They're not on our company car scheme because
You're not allowed to buy them?
No, customer first. That's the Toyota way, customer first. So I'm not even allowed. I know, vicious, isn't it? I'm not even allowed on the waiting list. So I'd have my GR Yaris. I'd have a late 70s Aston Martin V8 Vantage, so the slightly bull-nosed car, if you know what I mean, that they made into the 80s. I'd have a Bentley Turbo R, because I've wanted one since I was 14, and obviously makes no sense on any level at all. You're probably noticing these are, with the exception of the GR Yaris, these aren't supercars and they're not new cars, if you know what I mean.
No.
Which probably reflects the way I kind of approach the world. And then, very difficult. As a daily, I think a Lexus LC convertible, the V8. Would be my daily runaround. It's the first time that car's ever been described as a runaround.
Do you get to cruise around in various press cars most of the time?
Yeah,
Or
it's a real privilege of the job, actually, Sam, because we talked earlier about what happens if we get criticism. I've got to be absolutely au fait with everything we make. So if, I don't know, Matty Pryor from Autocar phones me up and says, I thought this and I didn't like it, I need to at least be able to say, well, that's not how I found it. And now, look, Matt's judgment is far better than mine. But that means sometimes I'm running around in an iGo, and sometimes I'm running around in an LC convertible. So I'm really lucky in that sense. Yeah, I get to keep across everything we produce. And because I look after both brands and we're such a big company, that generally means there's a different thing on the drive most weeks, which is one of the absolute joys of the job. Really love it.
Yeah, that's quite fun. And if you're like, I need something massive, there's something massive. If you want something small, there's something small.
I think, that's right. I mean, the bit you don't see is I pay a big lump of money to the taxman every year because that's a benefit in kind. So nothing comes for free, right?
Yes.
But I'm really lucky. If I need to move a load of stuff, I can bring a truck home and do that. And massive upside of the job.
Well, it sounds fun. Sounds fun, and it sounds like you are having fun, which is
I really enjoy it. Should have done it years ago, as we discussed earlier. I think it's what whoever you work for. To be honest, if you do this job, and you love cars, it's got to be one of the best jobs you can have. So I am daily grateful when I get out of bed at 5:45 in the morning that I do this.
Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. I've very much enjoyed it.
Me too, Sam. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.